Um, this guy's name is Mark Tomlinson, and I haven't seen Mark in person in years. Um, but I'll, um, when I was a bachelor, living at 311 West Tuig, before I gave that house to Debbie, he came by. He asked if he could come by, and he wouldn't tell me what for, but he worked for TxDOT, so I had a little bit of an obligation to hear him out. And he was trying to get me hooked up on the multi-level marketing deal called Amway. And I politely listened, and very high pressure. And I almost had to physically throw him out of my house. I mean, it got that pushy. I didn't, but I had to stand up and use all the body language. It's time to go. But what this says now, I'll post this up so you can read it. But he's retired from TxDOT, and now a huge engineering firm called Park Hill has hired him for something. Probably not an engineer in the corner, but more PR guy, and that's what it says. And then today's world, this is security. And I'm not wired like that, and that bothered Debbie. But neither were either of my grandfathers wired like that. But part of this world that Mark Tomlinson's finished career in, I mean, obviously he gave up on Amway and decided to pursue the TxDOT security. The security is you're attached to a larger organization that is more fundamentally sound than your own. My sisters do not understand this, so Debbie may never understand it. But Opa's sister, Margie, older sister, only sibling, said that her mother would do dishes and looking out the window at the neighbor's house, crying, saying, "I wish my husband had a secure job like the guy next door who worked for the phone company." But okay, so this has always been the case. In that women want security. Now, the trade-off in the old culture, where women were mostly domestic, and not as many of them were professional. When women were domestic, what I expected from Debbie was encouragement. When I come home from work, Debbie, can you ask me how my work day was, instead of just asking if I made any money, make me feel valued and supported by you, instead of just like an ATM. She refused to do it. That's control. No, it wasn't controlling. It was asking you to give me what I needed. And this part's to Debbie. And I was abundantly clear in what I needed from my wife in that regard, and she refused to give it. She said that was controlling when I was asking her for what I need. How did work go for you today, Carl? That's what I needed. What I got was, did you make any money today? Now, my point in bringing up Mark Tomlinson is we're all wired like that, all of us men. We want to make our own way, and my grandfathers were really like that. The culture has forced us to be more cookie cutters to fit into the mold of the kingdom we attach to, which is why the United States works. It's lots of little kingdoms, these little corporations that are their own kingdom, that the government hopefully helps the private corporations. No government job ever creates any wealth. It's the private little kingdoms that do, and that's why America works. And that doesn't mean we don't need government jobs. We do. In my family's business, we needed TxDOT. They built the plans, and they put those guys in those pickups out there making sure we did it right. You need that. But Mark Tomlinson at one time was trying to do the Amway thing, okay? And, I've mentioned to Marshall that I haven't encouraged him this way. I've told him that men are wired this way, that, in the movie Far and Away, the Irish landlord was miserable in Ireland. He was miserable. His wife was a diva. She was horrible to be around. All she wanted to do was have tea parties with her friends and be snooty. And he just went to the bar and got drunk every night because he was miserable at home. His daughter liked people like Tom Cruise, who was the go-getter type. But her mother wanted her to sit around and play the piano for her friends. Okay? So the Irish landlord gets burned out by the peasants and has to move to the States. It's the best thing that ever happened to him. He participated in the Oklahoma land rush, got him a piece of property, and was happy as a lark with that purpose. And his wife, of course, was miserable. Oh no, I have to help my husband build something. Oh no. Like my grandmother standing at the kitchen sink. I wish my husband had a real job. So, and I regularly think about people in covered wagons moving west in the United States. 1, fighting disease, 2, fighting weather, and 3, fighting Indians. They had no health insurance. They had no security. We don't live in that time today, but I think about it just to stay connected to the reality. Okay? So Mark Tomlinson kind of wanted to do what all of us men want to do, make our own way, and but he made a choice and he attached to TxDOT, the larger structure. Okay, I'm not good at that. I can do it. I proved I can do it in college. I attached to that structure, jumped through the hoops, kissed the butt I needed to kiss, but I earned all my grades. I didn't kiss any butt to get a grade. Sat on the front row, sat in the middle on the front row. I've since read that that's where people who want to learn sit, in the middle on the front. The cheaters sat in the back. Opa was overwhelmed when his dad died. That time after World War II was just a boom. Okay, and lots of work, lots of, the Dow 30 Industrials is 30 industrial type stocks. The S&P 500 got lots of other stocks in it, and the Russell 2000 has even more stocks in it. But those are the main indexes. The Russell 2000 and the S&P 500 did not hit new highs on Friday, but the Dow 30 Industrials hit new highs. Why? Trump. Trump's trying to build the industrial base back in our country. Pittsburgh used to be the steel capital of the world, but unions and labor are so expensive over here. A lot of that stuff moved overseas, and that's understandable. But Trump's going, whoa, wait, we need some more industrial stuff here. We're losing our, you with me? That's why the Dow 30 Industrials, that's 30 stocks, okay, hit a new high Friday. When Opa took over Strain Brothers in '58, he was overwhelmed. And that's not a word he used, that's the word I used for describing what he told me. He went to Mexico and sold a ranch. He went to Oklahoma and sold a ranch. He was trying to collect all the feathers and stuff, And you think about it, he married Oma, who had a ranch that was a 25-minute drive. That's a lot better than Oklahoma or Mexico. Trying to get something where he could have a reasonably comfortable life, not spread out. But when you come from poverty, you don't care if it's spread out. You're making it. You know what I mean? Versus his wife, who the biggest two things she did was go to the beauty shop and go to church. And if he took her to a ranch, all she did was fuss. So all the pictures of that grandfather Strain on any of his ranches, he's with his sisters, not his wife. She didn't like that part of life. Neither did Orrin Lee's wife, Dorothy. Orrin Lee and Dorothy lived at Orrin Lee's house, at his father's house and mother's house, at the ranch. The house down on Orrin Lee's, I guess the house is still there, I don't know. They lived there the first year of their marriage, and Dorothy didn't like it. She wanted it in town, which is understandable. Women like being around their friends and stuff. And I've posted a deal on healthcare costs, Debbie, and this part's to Debbie. Obama promised us they'd go down, and all of us that think like I do knew they wouldn't, the costs. It starts making a medicine, a box checking, how many boxes can I check that I can get paid for this? My friend Dennis Vick has smoked all his life, adult life. He quit drinking at about age 25. He got in too many fights when he was drinking. No AA, no, I just quit, But he went to the doctor for an annual checkup, and he said, don't you dare ask me if I'm still smoking and check the box that has Medicare pay you $65 for a, quote, smoking consult. I still smoke, and I'm going to keep smoking, and don't check that box. It pissed Dennis off. But that's why healthcare suddenly becomes checking boxes so you can get paid by the insurance company or the government. And, parts of healthcare are a lot better than they used to be. MRIs, blah, blah, blah. But when anything becomes box checking, it's about milking the government, which is different than the personal relationship where they think about what it's going to cost you and your wallet. You're thinking about what it's going to cost you. You don't care what it costs the insurance company or the government, and neither does the doctor. That's why they go up. You don't have the free enterprise incentive of bargaining. There's no incentive to keep the cost down. There's only incentive to check more boxes. Complicated world. One thing about being a corporate person is you have to sell part of yourself to the corporation. And all jobs are like that. They pay you a paycheck, and you agree to do what they need you to do. And if that doesn't work, you have to quit and go do something where it will work. And I'll post a little script on that I read in the 80s in a book called The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. And he talks about that. He talks about, when you don't say something that's going to incriminate the boss because you work, you slant your things just like the Democrats and Republicans do. You slant your things to favor your employer, unless you're attacking them and suing them, and then you slant it the other way to demonize them.